My nerves steal things. I'm a really bad teller of jokes, as you know. I know none of you are laughing here while I'm standing here, but my dad, on the other hand, was like really good at it. Like he was a sales guy, right? So he's just always chumming around with the guys at the docks and the warehouse docks and the security guys. And he tells jokes and he tells them really well and he sells them really well. And one of his favorites is guys got a brick in one hand, and some of them were kind of absurdist and weird, like this. Like he's got a brick in one hand, red brick, and the other hand he's got this yellow brick. And he throws up the red brick, and the red brick comes right back down. Then he throws up the yellow brick, and it doesn't come down. And then when my dad tells that joke, he gets to that point, and he really bursts out in laughing. Like this really huge belly laugh, and everybody laughs, and then I stood there and think about it, and they're like, what the hell is that? Anyway, I started writing stories that were based on my dad's jokes, and this is one that's like that. Anyway, it goes like this. I'm going to do a few of them, but they're all really short. It goes like this. Her father it's called Building with Brick. Her father was a writer. He was lousy with jokes. What might be called his favorite was a story of a young child, typically a boy as he told it, which she never questioned. She was too young to question, really, other than to automatically assume the identity of the boy, a kind of questioning that becoming the other gender. Had she been older, were she capable of the kind of language this story uses, she might have wondered at her father's careless telling, his automatic assumption of the male identity for the story's protagonist. But she was not, and typically she only ran her fingers along the bricks that made up their little bungalow's facade and listened as her father drew out the tale. The boy was playing with bricks, building a miniature house with a pile of leftovers from an addition to the much larger house in which the family lived. The pile had long ago been forgotten by his parents at the far west corner of the rear of their backyard. The boy's mother out of town, his father, typically neglectful of attention to him, holed up in his study with a laptop, a pen, and a large stack of paper. The boy spent the better part of an afternoon unpiling the heavy bricks one by one by one, an activity he knew might otherwise have drawn an avalanche of criticism, at the least supervision, which he was, of course, happy to be without. Though the bricks were indeed heavy, they weren't so heavy, and he wasn't so young as the girl was, that he couldn't toss them up into the air above his head, which he did, carefully, as he was old enough to understand that they had the power to come back down and crack his skull. He could well imagine what that might feel like, the girl's father told, the joke more cautionary tale at this juncture. What he saw as creative, pedagogical juice for his young daughter, that she might well carry on to impart someday to his grandchildren, just as his father, a salesman, gave them to him. The salesman was much better with jokes. The girl would understand the story long into adulthood to be about mystery, wonder, and fear. There was nothing funny about it particularly. In the course of the young boy's brick-throwing exercises, during which he began to fashion a mini-house in the back corner of his backyard, he uncovered near the center of the pile a painted yellow brick that positively glowed among the dull red mass of the others. This magic brick he held in one hand, in his other hand a more ordinary red brick, and marveled at its color. Delighted at the unlikely, entirely unexpected nature of the occurrence, the girl's father told, the boy's bones and muscles unleashed an uncommonly powerful energy, and he tossed the old ordinary red brick high into the air, and it rose and rose and rose, buoyed by an updraft of wind that blew into and away from his little backyard, just at that very moment, until he could no longer see it. But the ordinary red brick then came back down, eventually, as ordinary things tend to do, 20 feet behind him, and violently, just as he had almost forgotten about it, the delightful specter of the yellow brick taking his full attention. He giggled, examining the foot-deep hole where the red brick buried itself, and the father, telling the story, took the moment to explain in brief the laws of gravity to his daughter, how the higher the red brick got into the sky, the faster it would be traveling when it hit the ground. The boy was the absolute apotheosis of luck, he said. Luck that it hadn't fallen onto his head. And here came the punchline, or the father's long-winded version of such. The boy still had the yellow brick, and imbued by its uncommon power on this day, he flung it high with every bit of strength he could muster. He watched it rise and rise until, just like the red brick, it rose out of sight. The girl, She always imagined it carried away by the wind to become support for a golden house by the sea, or in an alternate version in her mind, one in which the Father never uttered the words, and it never came down. It descended as a sort of hammer, with its driving head crashing hard into the highest point on the top of her own head, drilling her down away from the places she'd known into an underworld of kindly gnomes, whose cities she helped to build with walls and ceilings of bright yellow, so as to keep them illuminated, her dreams clear in view. Anyway, that's that. Thanks.